My sign language interpreter raised her hands to translate, and the substitute said she was fired. I walked into third period with my interpreter like I had 1,000 times before, and the substitute's face immediately soured when she saw two of us coming through the door. My interpreter's hands moved as the substitute spoke, giving me her words. I wasn't told there would be an aide in here. My interpreter responded out loud while signing her own answer to me, and then her hands shifted back to the substitute, who muttered, "Great, special treatment." When class started and my interpreter began signing the lesson, the substitute stopped mid-sentence and stared at us. My interpreter kept signing as the substitute said. The constant hand movements are distracting. Then her face tightened as she gave me the substitute's next words. "You're not really deaf, you're just using her as a crutch so you don't have to do work yourself." My interpreter stood up and I watched her signs get sharp and fast as she told the substitute this was a legal accommodation protected under federal law and that she could call the front office right now to verify. Then her hands shifted back to give me the substitute's response. "You're fired. Get out of my classroom." My interpreter laughed and signed her own words. "I don't work for you, and I'm not going anywhere because my job is to stay with my student." The substitute took a step toward us and my interpreter's face twisted with disgust as she signed what the substitute was saying. "I've been teaching for 15 years and I know a scam when I see one. Kids fake disabilities all the time for extra test time and I'm not falling for it." My interpreter's hands were steady, but I could see a vein pulsing in her neck as she kept giving me the substitute's words. "If you don't leave, I'm calling security. I'm counting to 3 and then I'm dragging you out myself." Then my interpreter turned to me fully and signed as herself that everything was going to be okay and that she wasn't leaving me no matter what happened. That must have set the substitute off completely because she stormed over and grabbed my interpreter by the arm hard enough that I could see the skin go white under her fingers. My interpreter tried to sign to me that the substitute was hurting her, but could only get halfway through before the substitute slammed her other hand down on my interpreter's fingers against the desk. I saw one of them bend sideways at an angle that made my stomach lurch, and my interpreter's face twisted into a silent scream as she crumpled against the desk, cradling her hand. I was frozen in my seat watching the one person who had been my voice for 4 years sobbing on the floor, and I had never felt so completely alone. The substitute turned to me with this horrible satisfied look, and her lips formed words slowly and deliberately, making sure I could read every single one. "You can hear just fine. When you want to. I've seen your type before." The room exploded into motion, and I watched a boy near the back jump out of his seat with his mouth wide open, while a girl in the middle row had her hands pressed over her face. Students were pushing out of their desks and mouths were moving frantically in every direction, and I couldn't understand any of it because the one person who translated my world was crying on the floor. The substitute was screaming at everyone to sit down with spit flying from her lips, but nobody was listening, and a boy near the door looked like he was about to throw his textbook at her head. Then I saw movement in my peripheral vision, and turned to see Bella in the back corner signing to me rapidly, while holding up her phone with the screen facing outward toward the chaos. She signed. I FaceTimed my mom when the sub started going off. She works for the district and she's been watching everything. The substitute must have seen the phone because her whole body pivoted, and she shoved a desk out of her way trying to get to it. 3 students stepped into her path immediately, and when she tried to push through them, one of the boys put his hand on her shoulder and shoved her backward hard enough that she crashed into another desk and nearly fell. Bella stood up slowly and turned the phone around so the substitute could see the screen. A woman's face filling the display, jaw tight with fury, already holding another phone pressed to her ear. Bella's lips moved, and I watched the substitute's face drain of every drop of color as the words registered. The room went dead still, and the substitute looked around and seemed to realize for the first time that every single student in the classroom was on their feet. They had formed a loose circle around her without her even noticing, and she was trapped in the middle with nowhere to go. She turned toward the door, but 2 boys were already standing in front of it with their arms crossed. Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to find words that could undo the last 5 minutes, but there weren't any words like that. My interpreter pulled herself up against the desk, still cradling her destroyed hand, mascara running down her face, and walked straight toward the substitute until they were inches apart. She looked the substitute right in the eyes and said something slow and deliberate, and even though I couldn't see her lips from where I was sitting, I watched the substitute stumble backward like the words had shoved her. The principal arrived to find the substitute frozen in a circle of students who refused to let her through, and police escorted her out in handcuffs 20 minutes later.